You got to admit, it takes tremendous stones of stupidity to look at your team at home in an NFC Championship game where you've been before and come up short and say to yourself, hey, our defense hasn't stopped Tom Brady and the Tampa offense outside of turnovers pretty much all game. We've got arguably the best pure quarterback in the league today in Aaron Rodgers in the midst of an MVP season where he's thrown for 48 touchdowns and only 5 interceptions. You're down 8 points, little over 2 minutes to go. It's 4th down, deep in Tampa territory. Nah, we gonna kick a field goal. Really? That's presuming your defense could give you the ball back, which you had no indication on that day that they would be able to do. Lo and behold, they didn't. And here we sit talking about the Green Bay Packers, another season of Aaron Rodgers' peak of his career wasted. Another year where the Green Bay Packers had one of the best records in the league. They had home field advantage in the playoffs and failed to get it done. How many opportunities, how many chances are you going to get? And this whole Aaron Rodgers saga as it played out in the offseason. He's guest host in Jeopardy. He doesn't want to be there anymore. He doesn't like the organization. He doesn't like the fact that they don't consult with him for key decisions and all of this. Like, at the end of the day, it got resolved, but you're certainly coming into this season thinking about, as you saw Aaron Rodgers post on Instagram, picture of him and Davante Adams referencing The Last Dance. And could this be the last dance for Aaron Rodgers and even Davante Adams in Green Bay? Are we looking at the last season of this incarnation of the Green Bay Packers and they're going to look vastly, vastly different in 2022? That certainly is possible. And it's crazy to me to think about for a team that should be all in, because there is no tomorrow outside of maybe what they think they have in Jordan Love long term. You have one last chance to potentially win it all. Does this really feel like a team that truly has that desperate, go all in, gotta win it now mindset? Time will tell, but right now it sure doesn't feel that way, and that's a problem. When you look at this team and what they did in the offseason, obviously, ultimately, the Aaron Rodgers saga worked out. They got that situation taken care of. They re-signed Aaron Jones, which felt like a very important thing for them to do. Brought back Mercedes Lewis. They brought in Randall Cobb, going to Aaron Rodgers and saying, hey, who do you want to play with? And bringing back somebody that has a lot of chemistry with, a lot of familiarity with, did a lot of good things with during their time together in Green Bay. They re-signed Kevin King, which was admittedly a bit of a surprise to me since he was getting his ass lit up in that NFC Championship game. Good news for them is you've got David Bakhtiari returning from the torn ACL. So when you talk about elite left tackles being out at key points in time in the season, like the playoffs, when you're trying to make it to the Super Bowl, sure is nice to get a guy like that back when he's still in the peak of his career. That said, they did have some guys leave via free agency. Corey Linsley, Jamal Williams, Lane Taylor, Montravius Adams. So a couple of guys off of that offensive line, notably, could potentially feel some of those impacts there. Mike Pettin was fired and replaced by Joe Barry. I think for Packers fans, if nothing else, all those years of frustration of having to watch Dom Capers in that damn Packers defense, then they're like, you got to watch Mike Pettin in his damn defense. You're hoping that Joe Barry is going to represent a breath of fresh air. You're hoping he's going to represent something different. And you're hoping it's not going to be his defense come January that cost you a chance at the damn Super Bowl. Their draft, again, a lot of people point to it and say, hey, get Aaron Rodgers more help. And it's a double-edged sword to me because on the one hand, you should be drafting best player available, regardless of position, unless it's quarterback. Because you already have Aaron Rodgers, and you just drafted Jordan Love the year before in the first round, so no quarterback there. But everything else is probably fair game. And for a team like that, picking towards the tail end of round one, that's the way it usually should go. Don't draft for need, draft for best player available, and you'll identify a goddamn need. You want to get as much talent as you possibly can, especially when you're traditionally picking that late in round number one. So, this whole thing of get them help, wide receiver, tight end. I mean, agree, if the board lines up and if it makes sense, I'm aligned with that. But it's got to make sense. Whether or not it did or not, again, time will tell. But you also look at this and you say, well, they haven't really gone all in, but this offense was like historically great last year. They put up over 500 points. Top offense arguably in the league. Aaron Rodgers at 48 touchdown passes. The offense wasn't that doo-doo. And last time I checked, even though there were still flaws within the offense, I will grant you that, it was the defense that failed to stop the Bucs that was the reason that the Packers didn't go to the Super Bowl. So it's the defense that is the bigger need. If you already got an offense that's good, how much more do you need to invest in it to help Aaron Rodgers? And I've waffled a little bit on this admittedly, but realistically, how much do you need? How much is it going to take? And even if you improve on that side of the ball, how much of a benefit are you really going to see from that? At some point in time, you're absolutely going to get a diminishing return. Whereas if you address the right positions in the right way on the defensive side of the ball, you're going to get a much bigger return on your investment. So I understand in part the pick of Eric Stokes in the first round, the corner from Georgia. Was he better than Tyson Campbell? Again, time will tell. But I look at him and I'm like, ooh, maybe it could have been a receiver or a tight end there perhaps. But yeah, Josh Myers and then Amari Rogers, who I like, who I think is going to potentially get some opportunities as the season goes along, like what he can bring to this offense. But for Packers fans, I also understand the frustration of the perception of Aaron Rodgers needs more help, and you go and draft him a corner that you don't even know if he was the best corner on his college team last year. I mean, it's a fair question. It could potentially be a fair criticism. But I just want to make sure I provide the context of how much of that is really a need. I'm not saying it's not a need at all or wasn't important, but do you bend over backwards to take potentially an inferior player just because they're on the offensive side of the ball? That's all I'm saying. When you look at this team on paper, we know the strengths. Aaron Rodgers, obviously. And Devontae Adams on the outside. Like, he's a top 5 to 10 receiver in the league. I don't think there's any question about that. Probably even higher than that. I'm probably underselling Devontae a little bit. But he had a great 2020. He has great chemistry with Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers is still an elite-level quarterback in this league. Make no mistake about it. Even if you anticipate a slight regression from his 2020 numbers, which I do, that's still going to mean he's really damn good and top-of-the-line elite-level performance stuff. Then you look at that running game and you say, you brought back Aaron Jones. He had a great year last year. Former second-round pick A.J. Dillon. Now you're talking about an interesting, intriguing 1-2 punch combination there. No Jamal Williams, so you lose somebody, but you don't lose somebody that's so critical to your operation. You feel like it's such a gigantic seismic loss. I would expect this team to be able to run the ball effectively and relatively consistently. Now look at their defensive core on the defensive side of the ball. At all three levels, you got Kenny Clark, Zadarius Smith, Jair Alexander. Like, they've got top-level players, at least one of them, at all three levels of the defense. So they've got a good building block, a good foundation, a good core there to make the other things go defensively. You've got some star power. You've got some impact potential players there. But, for a team that's gotten so close so many times, there are certainly still some question marks. That receiving core outside of Devontae Adams, like, that was one of the problems that did manifest at key times last year with this offense was what receivers other than Devontae Adams could get separation consistently, and the answer was usually nobody. So that's the thing of, is it a need all the time? No, but in certain moments and situations, did they need a second guy that could stretch the field? Did they need a second guy that could find a way to get open consistently? Yes, they did, and they did not have it. The secondary, I look at them and their talent level overall and their overall depth, and it would concern me if I'm a Packers fan. It would. Like Darnell Savage, Adrian Amos, solid secondary duo. Jair Alexander is unquestionably a stud. But you brought back Kevin King, and he was getting torched last year in the NFC Championship game. Like, is Eric Stokes really going to contend with him? Like, what's the depth look like at corner after Jair Alexander? It's a valid question because it doesn't look good to me the way I look at it right now on paper. And how many times can you have a team win the number of games that they do and not win at all? I used to talk about it with the Saints for a couple of years, like, hey, they get to the NFC Championship game and then it doesn't happen. They get to the NFC Championship game or something and it doesn't happen. They get to the divisional round, it doesn't happen. Like, you can only go but so far so many times without changing the result before it starts to impact you in some way. And is there potential for regression for this Packers team from 2020? I certainly think that is possible, likely. Just looking at it offensively, those numbers were outstanding and damn near at a historical level, and it's really hard to maintain that in consecutive seasons and maintain that level of play. And for a team, I think that's won 13 games, if I'm not mistaken, the past 2 years. Even though you're adding a 17th game to the season this year, how many seasons can you win that many games in a row? It's a fair question. So when I look at the schedule, the good thing for Green Bay is, even though with the overall tough draw of having to play The AFC North and the NFC West, the beginning of this schedule lines up really well for them. The first 7 games, you go to New Orleans, assuming the game's going to be there, host Detroit, to San Francisco, hosting Pittsburgh, at Cincinnati, at Chicago, hosting Washington. Here's a potential worst case scenario, maybe a 5-2 start, could go 6-1, could go 7-0. I guess it'd be a chance for the Packers early on in the year to run away and hide in the NFC North and build up such a lead that nobody's going to feel like they can really come and get them. Get themselves cemented early as a contender for home field advantage throughout the playoffs and figure out the rest of the season as you go. I think it's more like in that week 8 to 12 stretch where we're going to find out more about them because they got to go to Arizona, then to Kansas City back-to-back weeks. They come back to Lambeau to host Seattle, go to Minnesota. They always have a game where they struggle with Minnesota every year. And then they host the Rams in week 12. So you're looking at some really tough opponents there. Did I just say Kansas City? I think I screwed up there. Either way. No, I didn't. I did not. That's right. If you think about it either way, you're talking about defending AFC champion, playoff team in Seattle, team that's familiar with them, matches up well with them, gives them problems in Minnesota. The Rams with their top flight defense. Yes, the Packers beat them in the playoffs, but they also brought in Matthew Stafford. Like, it's a different Rams team. The Cardinals, do they take a step forward with Kyler Murray in year 3? Like, that stretch is going to tell you a lot. And even when you get to the last part of the season, you got for week 14, you've got Chicago. By then is Justin Fields going to be starting. If he's not in the first game, you would anticipate he's going to be in the second game. So that could potentially be a vastly different looking and feeling Chicago Bears team. Then they got to go to Baltimore and host Cleveland, host Minnesota late in the year, and go to Detroit in week 18. And road divisional games even late in the year. This could be a sticky situation if you're facing a dumpster fire like the Detroit Lions traditionally have been. So I look at this schedule and I say 13 wins may be possible just because you've added the 17th game. But I think it's probably more of a 12-win team. I would expect to see a slight step back, even if the defense improves slightly, and especially in key areas. I'd expect the offense to take an ever so small slight step back. Now, that could be okay in the sense of you do a little less in the regular season, but you've got more talent there that's going to make a difference come playoff time. That's what you need. You don't need to win 13 games. You need to figure out a way how to win one game so that we can get to the goddamn Super Bowl again, so that way you can win one more game and win another Lombardi trophy. You're not trying to win the regular season here. Where sometimes it feels like the Packers and their philosophy and their mindset, it sometimes feels like that's what they're trying to do. And like I said, when I look at this roster and I look at this team, you are certainly, to me, in a win-now mode. You are a go-all-in-now mode type of situation. And I just don't see where they've went all in. Like, there's a stubborn insistence and belief in their way of doing things, kind of like the Belichick way type of stuff, where that arrogance plays in of, hey, we draft so many of our guys and we keep so many of our own guys and it's chemistry and it's all of this. And that works to a certain point in time. But sometimes you need a different straw to stir the drink, and sometimes you need to make some moves and shake shit up to help take your team past that step to get to that next level. And I'm not sure if those commodities, those pieces are there right now for the Green Bay Packers. They may be, and yet to manifest themselves. But I would look at this team and say, I would not be surprised at all to see them dominate the NFC North, win it by a few games, be the 1 or 2 seed in the NFC, make it to the NFC Championship game, and fall short and put the final curtain on the Aaron Rodgers era in Lambeau Field.